Okay, we have Bruce from Irondequoit, New York. You're on Late Night in the Midlands, Bruce.
Yeah, how are you, Mike?
I'm doing great.
And Mr. Moore?
Yes, sir. Hi, Bruce.
Yeah, how are you?
Very good.
I just had a couple of real simple questions. We've been hearing the discussion tonight about, the local North American continent, but how vis-a-vis the North American continent is the European continent, and let's say Russia and the Mideast, how are they supposed to fare compared to our
Good question.
land mass here?
Good question, Bruce. Once again, if you have a specific area of Europe or Asia or Africa or any place, you can do the following. You can go to Google Earth service. You have to download the program at no charge. And you can point the pointer to any place on the planet and get the altitude above sea level. And you can do that around the coast of Africa, Asia, Europe, any place.
No, I didn't know that, John, and I have Google Earth. I just downloaded it a few days ago. So
okay, well, it's a nice feature.
It is.
It is. And so there's your answer, Bruce. The Navy says, not John Moore, the Navy says 400 feet above sea level is the minimum, and that's bare minimum, to be safe near these oceans. 600 is probably a little bit better. Now, that's the cycle we're going through now, according to the Navy. There's evidence that these past cycles have been far, far worse. If you go out to these big flat-top rocks in the west, they call mesas.
Yeah.
A friend of mine did this, very good friend. He says, John, there's seashells on top of the mesas.
Yes, on top of the mesas.
On top of the mesas. And they aren't the fossils of seashells, Bruce. They are the seashells. They're just laying there in the open, and which bring, traditional mainstream geology says these things happened millions of years ago. Do you think seashells laying in the open would survive for millions of years, exposed to ultraviolet, rain, sandstorms, sleet?
They have to be much more recent.
Absolutely.
Like 3,600 years ago.
You're on top of it. Absolutely.
Now, Mike knows approximately where my location is because I happen to know Mike. But we're in the just north of Rochester, New York.
Right.
Now we're probably several hundred miles from the East Coast, maybe 300 miles from the East Coast. But we're right on the shore of Lake Ontario.
Well, let me tell you what the Navy says about the Great Lakes.
Okay.
The Navy says the Great Lakes will join together to become one Great Lake, stretching all the way to Hudson Bay, creating a new inland sea. Is right.
Hey, Mike, have you got any room in South Carolina?
Yeah, but I don't think we're safe here either, are we, John?
No, I mean, the southern part of the Appalachians does come down into South Carolina, and I've been talking to, I do private consultations, gentlemen, with families and corporations both, and if somebody says I'm going to make my stand in the Appalachian Mountains, I respect that. I'm not, I tell them all the alternatives, and if a person chooses the Appalachian Mountains, God bless them, and if you've got a good location, family connections in the community, especially. You get out in the country, if you don't have family connections, you could live there 40 years. You will still be an outsider.
Yeah, that's right. Now, you mentioned Augusta, Georgia, and, I'm pretty close there. I'm in Columbia, so.
Right.
Well, we happen to have some property in the family that is, has no electric, has no water, but there is a substantial piece of property at about 2,300 feet.
That's a good altitude, Bruce.
Above sea level, and that's only 55 miles south of Rochester.
Right. That's a real nice altitude.
I'm talking about sea level.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Sure. The problem is
you may want to consider developing that into your safe haven. Set up some kind of cabin there where you've got potable water, a way to keep it warm, a way to grow food. Unless somebody lives there all the time, you can expect to be burglarized.
Oh, yeah.
The only security in the country is having your home within sight all year long, keeping in mind the summer vegetation within sight of a trusted neighbor.
Right.
That's the only security in the country, really.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
There is no other. You think there is, you're fooling yourself.
Mm-hmm. So, is there any way of getting hold of one of these maps, or do you just go...
My DVD, Global Warming, What the Government Isn't Telling You, I got a toll-free order line, 24/7, answered by St. Louisans, not Mary and Mumbai. That toll-free number to order Global Warming, What the Government Isn't Telling You, is 800-592... 9543.
9543.
Yes, sir. And the website, you can order it right off the website, thelibertyman.com.
Look, John, could you repeat that just once again?
The telephone number is 800-592... 9543.
9543.
Yes, sir.
That's for slow people like me and maybe others.
Well, I don't write too fast either, especially this late at night.
Okay. Well, John, it's been a pleasure listening to you.
Thank you, Bruce. Good to talk to you.
I'll let you guys get back to your discussion.
All right. Thank you very much, Bruce.
Okay.
And, have a great night.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, and thanks for listening. Yeah, so, like you said, John, a lot of people, are concerned about where they're living, and, you might be at a high spot above sea level, but at the same time, you got to, consider what's around you.
And that's all it is a start.
That's right, because I know where he's talking 55 miles from Rochester, you still got Buffalo, New York, not walking distance, sure, but it's there.
Right.
There's a lot of cities around there. So
absolutely.
And the city's not really that great now being policed. Imagine when it's not policed.
Yeah, I'm looking here at a map right now of New York. It's a big, beautiful state, but there's way too many people to suit me.
Yeah. I like where you are. I think that's it sounds best. I know some people who have gotten a safe haven going in Montana, and it's a really great idea. I've always questioned whether if Planet X comes by, not if, but when it comes by and it shakes this planet around, is that going to set off Yellowstone? And if it does,
Yellowstone's at risk. Anybody who doesn't think Yellowstone's at risk is living a fantasy.
It's been actually hasn't it had lava coming out of it?
I'm not aware of lava coming up, but
they called
the summer of, let's see, this is summer of 2011. I think the summer of 2005 is when the United States Geological Survey set up 100 new seismic sensors all throughout Yellowstone. It's a supervolcano. Basically most of the entire park and parts outside the park is part of the caldera. It's a flat caldera. Mm-hmm. That's the nature of supervolcanoes. They have flat calderas as opposed to those classic cone-shaped calderas.
Right.
And yes, it's very much at risk. And I'm probably 800 to 900 miles from the Yellowstone area, and even here where I am in the Ozarks, we would feel the effects of it. The volcanists that study these things, they say a minimum 600-mile radius, mostly north, south, and east. Prevailing winds go north, south, and east, not so much west.
So now, if Yellowstone did go off, I mean, that would really affect the entire planet, wouldn't it?
It would. It would create 1 or 2 years of no summer.
Ooh.
Affect the growing seasons worldwide, affect international airline traffic, put ash down anywhere from 10 or 12 feet deep around Montana to 6 inches to a foot deep in northwest Missouri, excuse me. It would, by itself, it could bring the economy of the United States to its knees by wiping out the grain belt and all the other things I just mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm thinking about it going off, once Planet X comes and starts causing all its destruction, which in my opinion, I think it already has. I mean, you look at the earthquakes that have been happening.
Right. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Earthquakes. The Navy says that when the Mississippi is 100 feet deep, the weight of the water on top of the New Madrid seismic zone will trigger at least 3 9-point plus earthquakes. Earthquakes is something everybody has some knowledge of, but here's some things people may not know. The Richter scale was developed by Charles F. Richter. He died in 1984.
Mm-hmm.
Less than a year after his death, the Richter scale was reduced by one full number value. It's a logarithmic scale. When you go from 4.0 to a 4.1, that's a 100% increase in the magnitude of the strength of the earthquake. When you reduce it by one full number value, that's a 1,000% reduction in the force of each earthquake that's recorded, that people see.
Yeah, I've heard about that, actually. I've actually reported on that, you know, when people hear about this earthquake, and they, oh, it was just a 4-point this or that, how did it do all that damage? Like, well, you got to add more to it.
Right. Well, just in the last 24 hours, we had a 4.7 on the New Madrid, which I'm fairly close to the New Madrid seismic zone, by the way, and they said it's the worst earthquake since 1967. Well, in 1967, they had the original Richter scale. You know? They knew, the powers that be, they knew 26 years ago, Michael, what would be happening 26 years in the future. A dramatic increase in the number and severity of earthquakes, dramatic increase in the number and severity of volcanoes, and dramatic increase in the number and severity of bizarre, violent, dangerous, weather-related events.
And they have kept this secret for the most part. I mean, most people think that this is just some kind of conspiracy theory and, you know, everybody's trying to sell a book or this or that. And it really irritates me that so many people will not take this serious. You tell them about it and they wave their hand. Now, I got a lot of people who pay attention, but then there's that handful that don't.
Well, the Nile is not a river in Egypt.
No, it's certainly not.
And something you need to learn early on, Michael, and I encourage you to do this, do not get an emotional attachment to the outcome of trying to explain this to people.
Yeah.
If you do, it'll just make it crazy. I mean, you can't.
You
cannot have an emotional attachment to trying to wake people up.
No, and you know, I have people all the time say, you talk about this and you laugh and this and that. What are you gonna do? I mean, I'm not gonna crawl in a corner and cry. There's nothing I can do about it. It's gonna happen. All I could do is try to be prepared and have the ones that I love prepared. And
that's about it. And for those who can't take care of themselves, you prepare a safe place for them. They're very young and very old. Now, I have a brother. I have a couple of brothers. One owns 2 companies. He has a nice home, goes on nice vacations, and a brother-in-law who has a nice home and goes on nice vacations, owns his own business. I informed them both in writing, gentlemen, I've got enough to take care of myself, my wife, my daughter, my grandchildren, and our mothers, my mother and my brother-in-law's mother. If you show up without a 2-year supply of food, you're going to put in jeopardy everything I've put together. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to allow you to jeopardize everything I've done to take care of those who can't take care of themselves.
Well put.
And this will happen. I mean, if you have relatives or co-workers or friends that know you've set up a safe haven and you've got food and potable water and a garden and all this stuff, they're going to show up.
Oh yeah, it's just like winning the lottery.
Yeah,
they're there.
and people joke about that, but it's I'm not going to allow people who've been going on nice vacations to show up without 2-year supply of food. There's no excuse.
So, do you think that then a 2-year supply of food? I mean, certainly that's playing it safe, but might that be enough? These are some of the things
There's no way to know. We're going to be on our own growing food.
Which isn't going to be an easy task.
If you haven't done it, if you don't grow up gardening, if you don't grow up taking care of chickens and rabbits and ducks and goats and so forth, it's hard for a city person to acquire these skills. It's time consuming and it's difficult. The first garden you grow will almost without a doubt be unsuccessful. I can almost guarantee it.
Well, I'm pretty good with the gardening. It's the animals part of it that I
well, you can't learn out of a book, Michael.
No.
I mean, that's not going to happen. You can't learn this stuff out of a book. Books are helpful, but you need to get animals and start taking care of them or help somebody else that already has them. That's the only way you're going to learn, really.
Right. Now, as I said, I know a woman who's gotten a safe haven going there in Montana, but again, it's that Yellowstone that concerns me. But it is a nice spot. She's in a great place if that thing don't go off.
Well, everybody should have a plan B.
Yeah.
There's no place that's absolutely safe. That place doesn't exist.
That's right. So, John, we got to take another break, and let's go back to our phone line and get back talking with John. All right, John, we are back, and so we want to talk about this seed bank a little bit, but I guess first, let's take another call if you're up to it.
Sure, let's do that.
All right, great. So we have Doxy from Montana. You're on Late Night in the Midlands.
Hey.
Hey, how you doing?
I heard you talking about me, so I figured I'd better call in.
Yeah, absolutely. I was bringing it up tonight because, that's always been my concern is the Yellowstone. And, that was always only been my only stump in the road there. But, I guess it's 50-50 either way you go, right, John?
Well, I always suggest no matter what you're doing, what your plans are, always have a plan B.
Which then it might be too late. I don't know. What do you think, John? We got a pretty big fault that goes through here.
Well, these seismologists continue to find faults and branches of faults. The New Madrid's that way, and
the Wabash.
It's happening all over. It's finding new branches of these fault lines.
Yeah, and I know I've seen pictures of Africa. I guess I don't know if it's one of the deserts there is just cracking right in half. Have you seen that?
Oh yeah, on the Horn of Africa. Yep, absolutely. It's very scary stuff, to say the least.
There's so many people who still won't believe that Planet X is even real, and I'm like, wake up.
I'm telling you, I've been for 3 years now. I've been preaching the preach, and telling everybody about it, and. I've gotten some who listen and others who listen because I think it's just a great story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, entertainment.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. I know.
Just wait.
When I
wait till their worst nightmares start happening, and it'll be too late. And no matter what you said, it's not going to matter anymore.
Well, we're at a point where we're not at the point yet. Although it's let me back up here.
Around the corner.
At some point, it won't matter how much money you've got. There won't be time to build a serious steel-reinforced concrete shelter. These things just don't pop up out of the ground. To have a commercial contractor come in and build a shelter of steel-reinforced concrete takes time. And at some point, how many digits you have in your checkbook or checking account will not matter anymore.
That's right. And I think we're getting close to that point now, John. I really do. All the signs are around us.
We have 28-inch thick concrete.
Well, good for you.
Well,
I hope it works.
Well, you certainly have done everything that a normal human being can do, and then some.
Yeah.
Another thing that really worries me is that all these people out there storing food, they're not getting their bodies accustomed to eating beans on a regular basis or rice or.
That came up today at lunch. One of my friends who knows about what we're talking about said, I really don't want to eat that many beans.
Well, there's people who, they're storing lots and lots of wheat, but they don't even have a wheat grinder.
Oh, yeah.
What good will it do them?
I know.
That's the part that frustrates me. I'm trying to teach all these people how to grind wheat and how to do things and try to eat the food so that their bodies are ready for it, or they're just going to get sick and die even if they store the food.
Or be really miserable if they don't die.
And Doxy, when I do come, I do not want to be in charge of having to slaughter animals. I'll that's the one job that you won't want me doing because, it'll look like soup when I'm done.
Will you milk the goats?
Oh, I'll milk the goats. I just don't want
I've been making cheese on a regular basis. We've been grinding wheat for the last 2 weeks making bread. So I'm trying to teach everybody how to make bread. People don't even have a clue.
It's all the common things.
The common skills that used to be common in this country 60, 70 years ago have almost evaporated.
Yeah, everybody's used to going and buying it from the store now, and one day you're not going to be able to do that. And there's going to be a lot of people are going to die just because of their...
Hello?
Okay, we lost Doxy.
Okay.
But anyways, a lot of people are going to die just because it's not even about how prepared they are. They're just not prepared for what they're being prepared for. You know what I mean? They're getting, like she said, they got the wheat, but they don't have the wheat grinder. just, you know, their diets are going to be seriously lacking, and they're going to die from that.
Here's a quote from one of the government insiders who has been aware of this for probably 20-plus years. He says, quote unquote, "John, I'm too old to learn how to live all over again."
Yeah, you know, I was just telling Nova, my assistant here, you know, she asked, "What about your father?" Because my dad lives in Rochester, and he's 80 years old, and I brought this up to him, and, you know, he was very interested, and, you know, one of his things he said before we hung up is, "Oh, I better get flood insurance done, huh?" And I'm like...
Well, people try to incorporate into their belief system, their paradigm, these new things, and that's what your dad was trying to do.
Exactly. And I said, "Dad, I don't know who you're going to put the claim in with."
Right, exactly.
So, you know, it's amazing. And, you know, you can't save everybody. All you could do is get the information out there. Now, I understand what you, John, didn't you at one time didn't you just do a political program and then you turned it around when you found out what you found out? Is that how that went?
I told my audience, this will be, I guess, 5 years ago this coming summer, that I was going to back off from all the geopolitical matters and focus primarily on preparedness. There are a lot of fine radio talk show hosts that spend most of their time talking about geopolitical matters, and God bless them, let them do that, and I'll focus primarily on preparedness.
Yeah, absolutely, because, you know, when it's all said and done, a lot of the stuff that they're talking about right now isn't really going to matter, is it?
Yes, I did a presentation last Thursday to my local ham radio club, and we had a couple of women there who are very active in the Tea Party, and one of them made a comment to me after the fact, after my presentation. She says, "John, this really doesn't matter, does it, the political activity?" I said, "Well, no, it doesn't."
It really doesn't. Now, okay, let's before we have a break coming up in about 10 minutes, but in the meantime, let's talk a little bit about that seed bank. Now, I understand that there is a huge seed bank, and there's got to be a reason behind it.
Well, these seed banks exist all over the world. The one that we're talking about, of course, was built on an island. It's part of the country of Norway, but it's not part of the mainland of Europe. It's built on an island at the edge of the Arctic Circle. Now, Michael, if you were going to put in a house there in South Carolina, in Columbus, South Carolina, you would call in a contractor, and at some point they would bring in the backhoes and call the ready-mix plant and have concrete delivered, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Workmen go home every night and get a good meal and take a hot shower. You know what? On that island, there's no ready-mix plant. There's no motel for the workers to go home at night. There's nothing. And despite going into an island at the edge of the Arctic Circle with no ready-mix plant, no motel, no restaurants, no roads, they built this thing in about 6 months.
Wow.
Oh, wow is right, which means they had to bring in and build their own ready-mix plant on site. They had to provide food, shelter, housing, hot showers for the workers that were working there, probably working at least 2 shifts a day, maybe 3 shifts a day, 7 days a week. You may as well work 7 days a week. What else are you going to do on an island at the edge of the Arctic Circle, right?
That's right.
Which translates into probably, I'm going to guess, $300 to $400 a square foot to build this thing. You know, when you have to bring in everything, as opposed to calling up the ready-mix plant and have workers that drive to work.
Right, right.
You're looking at incredible expense, partly funded, by the way, by Bill Gates. Why would they do it in such a hurry? Well, the reason is they have no choice. They have no choice. They had to get this thing done so they could begin stocking it with the heritage seeds of the world. No genetically modified seeds, thank you very much.
Yeah.
The heritage garden seeds of the world are being stored there in a very safe location. It's about the safest place they could find, on an island at the edge of the Arctic Circle.
And again, there's no guarantees.
No guarantees, and there are multiple seed banks. That's one that's received a lot of notoriety in the last 3 or 4 years, but there's no guarantees. That's why they do have multiple seed banks. Most countries, even fairly small countries like Zimbabwe, will maintain a seed bank. It's It's not a terribly expensive thing to do, and it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, it is a good thing to do, and by having multiples, obviously they feel maybe a few of them will get knocked out, but they expect at least one of them to survive.
Right, and that's part of what they've been doing now since 1979 with the continuity of government contingency planning, is building multiple shelters all over the country, not just Denver, not just Atlanta or Augusta, but multiple shelters all over the country, and dispersing their resources and their people so that if they lose one, they won't lose everything.
That's right. And, last time you were on, you spoke of many Google searches that people can do to actually see this information.
I did, and this is what we call secondary information. And here's some of the simple Google searches. Okay. CIA and the word Denver. NSA, no such agency, National Security Agency. NSA and the word Denver. NSA and the word Utah. NSA and Augusta. They're busy guys. Now, it was announced in the fall of 2009 that NSA was building a computer data center 20 miles south of Salt Lake City in the desert. I've been 20 miles south of Salt Lake City in the desert. It really is the desert. And that's to replace the 20 acres of Cray mainframe computers underground at Fort Meade, Maryland, just outside Baltimore.
I see.
Oh, yes. There was a film, a Hollywood film, with a couple of well-known actors, Enemy of the State, Gene Hackman, Will Smith, and Gene Hackman. There's a quote in that movie where they talk about 20 acres of Cray mainframe computers underground at Fort Meade, Maryland. Now, that's amazing. Now, the reason they say they're moving these computers, this computer data center, is, quote unquote, we can't get enough electricity in Maryland.
No, well, yeah, wow, that's the best they can come up with?
That's it. I mean, even I know. I mean, I'm sitting here 45 minutes from the nearest red, yellow, and green traffic signal. Even I know that they sell electricity back and forth across this country very freely.
So apparently we could put a man on the moon, but we can't get enough electricity to power up computers in Maryland.
Right. Wow. That's right. There's another Google search. EPA and the word libraries. Plural, EPA libraries. 4 years ago, the EPA announced publicly they were shutting down all 3 other libraries. The publicly stated reason was cost savings. Now, Michael, if you file a grievance against your employer, it's kind of like suing your boss, isn't it?
Sure is.
Okay. The scientists at the EPA, God bless them, they filed grievances against their employer. They sued their boss, saying, gentlemen, you've cut us off from what we need. Those contents of those 3 libraries is the largest English language collection of scientific articles, journals, books on the matters that these men and women need to keep us safe. You've cut us off from what we need to keep America safe. The EPA said we did this as cost savings measure. The one agency in the government that's mostly honest most of the time is the Government Accountability Office, the GAO. They came back and said, no, gentlemen, it costs more to shut down these 3 libraries than to keep them open.
Yeah.
So that's obviously a fabrication. The real reason, in my opinion, is they're moving that collection of material someplace safe.
Yeah, as well the Vatican.
And the Vatican did the same thing, but here's the deal with the Vatican. They were shut down for the Vatican Library 4 years ago, the same summer. They announced the Vatican Library was closing, and it had been open since the Middle Ages, by the way.
Sure.
Every working day since the Middle Ages, about 600 years. They said that they had a structural defect in one of the buildings, and they had to close it for remodeling purposes. Well, the Vatican Library did reopen this past year, 2010. I believe what happened was they had teams of archivists, professional archivists, come in and copy everything that they wanted to preserve, something they could not do while researchers were working and observing what was going on.
It makes a lot of sense.
And so they copied everything, probably in different formats. I don't know what all they did, obviously, but and then the Vatican Library is the largest collection of ancient manuscripts on the planet. Very likely they have the contents, the valuable contents of the ancient library from Alexandria, Egypt, and it's a priceless collection. You could not put a dollar amount on what that collection is worth.
Especially now.
Absolutely.
So, okay, so we got the libraries moving. We've got military outfits that have actually moved their operations to Denver.
Right.
CIA, I mean, they've moved their operations to Denver. Is that correct?
Right, and here's another library, the City Library in Birmingham, England. If you put Birmingham Library in the Google, I think that'll come up. It's a beautiful round structure, about 4 or 5 stories tall. A collection of more than 1 million books. They say they're closing the library for remodeling purposes. Does it sound like a theme?
It sure does.
So they had to find a place to put 1 million books. Did they rent vacant warehouses in Birmingham? No. They moved the books to a mine.
Oh my goodness. And you know what's funny is the average person will find nothing wrong with that. They'll say, oh yeah, it's just coincidence. I don't believe in coincidence.
No, hardly.
Well, John, we've got to take another break here, and then we're going to come back. When I come back, I want to talk a little more about some of the things people can look into to verify.
Okay, let's do that.
All right, great. So we'll be back in a moment. I'm Michael Vera. This is Late Night in the Midlands. My guest is John Moore, and this is Late Night in the Midlands. And I told you, I have these guests on about Planet X to pretty much back up what I've been telling you, and to warn you, to give you that option at least to be prepared. Something the government's not going to do. They're not going to tell you, hey guys, this is coming in this time frame, so you might want to get ready. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. And when you do see it in the sky, they're going to give you some lame excuse, as we've talked about. So that's why I do this. I don't do this to scare anybody. I'm not scaremongering. It's not propaganda like Rusty Rod says. It's really not. It's true, in my opinion, and if this don't say, I don't know, if time goes by and this don't happen, I'll publicly apologize to everybody, but I honestly believe that this is true, that it's happening. All the signs point towards it. You got, just Google sky blacking out the area where it's supposed to be. That tells you something right there. What are they hiding? What are they hiding? So that's what we're going to find out tonight. I already know, but some of you obviously don't. So that's why we're here tonight, right, John?
Absolutely.
Okay, so yeah, so what are some of the other things that people can do to, because there's going to be some, it's going to take everything just short of a hammer to the head before they actually acknowledge this and say, okay, it might be true.
So, what is the question again, Michael?
Well, the question would be what are some of the other things that people can do to confirm this? If what we've said already.
Well, here's a massive thing that we haven't even talked about at all. That's on my new disc number 2, global warming, what the government isn't telling you. The Gulf Stream. Here we go. The second most important story of the past 2,000 years, the most important story obviously being the birth of our Lord Jesus. The second most important story is the following. The Gulf Stream has stopped. Now, first of all, an explanation of what the Gulf Stream is. It's warm water coming up from the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean, up the east coast of the United States, gets to about Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, and starts going east, which it's done for many, many centuries. We don't know how many centuries. The Gulf Stream was given the name Gulf Stream by Benjamin Franklin in about 200 years ago. It has many other names. The scientists call it the North Atlantic Thermohaline Conveyor. These ocean currents, of course, are all connected worldwide and all loop around and connect up with each other. The Gulf Stream, as of June 12th last year, stopped. Now, my paper, No Need for Panic, written in the fall of 2005, published January 2006, I gave a warning there that the Gulf Stream was losing mass and velocity, and the scientists were saying then, 6 years ago, that anywhere from 5 to 20 years in the future, it would stop.
Now, John, let me ask you something really quick. Now, this might be another cover-up for them anyways, but I've heard from some that they try to reason that, oh, the Gulf Stream is stalled or what have you, and it's because of the oil. Now, is it possible that this oil spill was maybe, I don't know, maybe they set something up so they have an excuse later?
Well, there's lots of speculation, and as a homicide detective, I live in the world of evidence.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes I'll be on the witness stand. I'll have an attorney wanting me to speculate, and we're in front of a jury, and somebody's life's on trial here. I'll say, "Counselor, do you want my sworn speculation?" I can speculate with the best of them. Let's stay in the world of evidence for a while, then we can speculate. The Gulf Stream, the engine that drove the Gulf Stream was the salinity, the salt content of the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
That for the past 20-plus years has been dramatically decreased each year because of melting freshwater ice in Greenland, melting freshwater ice in the Antarctic. The melting ice in the North Pole is floating seawater, so it doesn't change either the salinity or the ocean level, either one. Now, they knew, they being the oceanographers, they knew the Gulf Stream was losing mass, losing velocity, and was becoming a very, very weak and very much at risk phenomenon. Fast forward to, and they knew that years ago, and I wrote about it in 2006. Fast forward to the spring of 2010, and we've got the British petroleum oil spill. There was a university-level experiment. It's been repeated a number of times. We know this is true. They take an 8-by-8-foot tank, about 100 feet long, clear plexiglass or glass, fill it with fairly cold water, maybe 50-degree water, salt water. And at one end, you inject fairly warm, maybe 75 or 80-degree temperature salt water at one end. It will move through there, forming a thermal barrier, move from one end to the other, uninterrupted, until you put oil in the mix. When you put oil in the mix, it breaks down the thermal barrier between the cold water and warm water. It all starts mixing up, and the stream stops.
Oh, okay.
According to Dr. Zangari, I'll explain who Dr. Zangari is in a moment. That's what happened in June 12th of 2010. The British petroleum oil spill broke a very fragile, very much at risk Gulf Stream, is what it did. There's something in the Gulf of Mexico called the Gulf Loop Current, which loops around and used to come out between Florida and Cuba and join with the rest of the Gulf Stream going north on the east side of Florida.
Right.
That's what broke on June 12th. Now, I was put in touch with Dr. Zangari the middle of July this past year, 2010. Dr. Zangari it's Luigiani Zangari. He's a PhD scientist in Italy. He works with other scientists in Europe and North America exclusively on the Gulf Stream. That's all these men and women do. And when we first got in touch with him, he said he thought the Gulf Stream may have stopped. He had not yet confirmed it. They did more calculations, more research on the data, and he confirmed before the end of July that, in fact, on June 12th, the Gulf Stream had stopped.
Oh, okay.
Now, that summer of 2010, in Russia, they had the worst summer in 1,000 years. They've got weather records in Russia going back to the year 1010. This current winter, the scientists say they're having the worst winter in Moscow in 1,000 years. The worst winter in Norway since 1788. The worst winter in the United Kingdom, England, Ireland, Scotland, in more than 200 years. In fact, the Charles de Gaulle Airport in France in December was partly closed. They thought the roof might collapse because of a snow load.
Yes, I remember hearing about that. Well,
you know, Michael, if you're going to build one of the biggest airports on the planet, you're going to hire a very good commercial architectural firm with the best engineers. And if you ever thought there was even a smallest possibility of having to calculate for a snow load at one of the biggest, 5 or 6 biggest airports on the planet, do you think they would put that calculation in there when they were building this building? Of course they would.
You would certainly think so.
Of course they would. You know, these are very smart men and women. But they didn't, it would be like calculating a snow load for Key West. Why would you do such a thing?
That's
You know?
right. That's right. And, you know, the weather patterns have been going crazy everywhere. I mean, just the flooding alone.
Well, they are, and this is what we haven't talked about, and we need to talk about. The Gulf Stream provided a regulating factor for the jet stream. The jet stream is a 200-mile-an-hour wind, 5 miles up. That's always up there. That 200-mile-an-hour wind is there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The jet stream plays a very great role in weather worldwide. In fact, here's a direct quote from Dr. Zangari. The Gulf Stream is the pacemaker of the climate of the planet. Now, that's very strong words.
It is.
On one hand. On the other, oh my goodness, look at the weather. This past fall, Russia announced that they were not going to honor futures contracts already signed to deliver grains to other countries. Ukraine did the same thing. Now, Michael, that's not an act of war on one hand. On the other hand, it's about an inch away from being an act of war. That's how serious not honoring futures contracts is.
Yeah.
But they did the right thing. They're keeping the grain for their own people. That is the right thing to do. That's the responsible thing to do, isn't it?
It certainly seems like it is.
Yes, it is. Of course it is.
Mm-hmm.
All grain-growing areas are at risk for the following reasons worldwide. Both hemispheres, northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere. And we're talking grains, corn, wheat, rice, soybeans, barley, oats, spelt. All these grains can tolerate a certain high level of precipitation, a certain low level of precipitation, a certain high level of temperature, and a certain low level of temperature. Within those parameters, you're going to get a harvest of corn, wheat, soybeans.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get too high of either precipitation or temperature, once you get too low of precipitation or temperature, you'll start losing a percentage of your harvest to the point where diesel fuel costs more than you're going to get a harvest. So they don't even bother harvesting anymore. You lost your harvest.
That's right.
And that's what's happening. We're losing percentage of harvest all over the planet. We're at the lowest inventories right now in the United States in decades of grains. And grains are what feeds the world. Grains are what feeds the people and the animals of this planet. Obviously, fruits and vegetables play a very large role. But when it comes to pure numbers and percentage of what gets the job done, it's grains.
It's been said that the food inflation is going to skyrocket.
It is. It's going to be a double whammy because of the reduced harvest and the increased price of petroleum products. Petroleum products are used at every step in modern agriculture. Fertilizers are made from petroleum products. The tractors run on diesel fuel. The insecticides are made from petroleum products. At every step of the way, you've got petroleum products in the mix. So that plus the reduced harvest is going to be a dramatic increase in all foods.
Well, we're in for a rough ride, John.
Absolutely, we are.
We definitely are, and you know, I've seen even the changes here. I mean, I'm not originally from Carolina, but being in Columbia, I've been here for a few years now, and this past winter, I mean, we've seen snow a few times, which is a little unusual from what I understand.
It is. I've seen photographs of homes in Ireland where the pipe comes out of the ground, the freshwater pipe under 40 pounds pressure, goes into the side of the house about 3 feet high, frozen and burst. You know, they don't even bother to bury the pipes.
Yeah, you know, and there's different frost lines in different parts
of the world.
Well,
that's true, and these are engineering parameters, and depending where you are, in the area I am, 18 inches is plenty deep. Sometimes they bury 24 inches to be safe. Our friend Bruce, calling from Rochester, they probably bury the pipes up there 3 to 4 feet deep. In Moscow, they bury the pipes 6 to 8 feet deep.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you look at a map, and this is on my DVD, Global Warming, What the Government Isn't Telling You. Look at a map of the world, and you look at England, Ireland, and Scotland, look at London. You go due east, and what do you run into? Moscow. Now, obviously, London, before this current winter, never had very bad winters like Moscow, but that's where they're headed. And one or two things is about to happen here, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
Either we're at the beginning of a mini ice age, which could last 8, 10, or 12, 15 years, or we're at the beginning of a full-blown ice age, which will go on for maybe centuries.
something that I don't know if I want to survive. Because
well, people make that statement, but when it comes down to it, you'll do whatever you have to survive.
it's human nature, right?
It is.
It certainly is.
People make flippant statements like that, but that's all they are, is flippant statements. And the reason they make these flippant statements is to bring the conversation to a conclusion.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's something I'm definitely not trying to do right now. Is bring this to conclusion.
Well, we can't do that. It's talk radio, Michael.
That's right. And I'm far from done with questions and theories about what's going to happen. One of the other things that I have a buddy, a colleague, if you will, who really gets out there after the New World Order. And one thing that I think I've been kind of shifting a little, thinking, this New World Order, somebody had pointed it out to me and it really made sense. New World Order. It's for the New World.
Right.
Exactly. And, Jesse Ventura and Alex Jones exposed all these massive graves, these caskets, if you will.
Right.
I mean,
Plastic caskets.
Yeah, and I'm thinking now it makes sense what those are for, and maybe the FEMA camps. This is for the people the refugees who come, after it's, I guess, over.
Right.
Maybe, right?
Right. Well, they aren't necessarily building these camps because they're mean old monsters, these New World Order people. They may be simply building them because they're going to need them.
That's one of the things I think about, but, and that's something else I'm wondering. Now, when it does, say 2 years after, and they're got to eventually get out there and try to do some kind of cleanup or organization, right? What happens when these militaries find people who survived, such as yourself, maybe in the mountains? Are they going to say, come with us, or are they going to leave you alone?
That's a good question. I do not have an answer for that. I know what the goal is. The goal is to have a shiny New World Order where there's about, if you ever talk about the Georgia Guidestones, you know what I'm talking about, 500 million people alive on the planet, as opposed to 6.5 billion people.
Right.
And basically two classifications, very similar to the feudal times, where there's a small group of people who own and run most everything, and everybody else is a numbered and chipped worker slave.
Now, I wonder also about the different countries. Are the big countries in on this? Do they are they saying, hey, we're going to team up?
The big countries, Russia, China, United States, to a lesser extent France and Canada and England. Of course, they're in on it and they know about it and they're doing what they can do. They fully intend to still be countries, I think. They may just have a one world government. That's certainly is part of the picture. Not that it would matter much. Government will extend as far as the barbed wire goes, and there will be no government. Government after these events will be, if there's any government at all, will be at the town level and county level for most people most of the time, going back to the way it was before World War II. Before the Great Depression and Roosevelt, the most government most people saw most of the time was the county government, and we'll be going back to that.
Once everything goes to hell in a handbasket, we also got to worry about these nuclear facilities. What's going to happen with those?
Well, I believe the engineers that work there will do the right thing, and that they will, if they have to shut them down, they will shut them down in a manner that's relatively safe. And if they don't, just pray that you're not downwind from them.
It'd be an awful lot of praying.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So now, in this next segment, this last hour coming up, I want to talk about survival. What people can do to survive.
All right, we'll do that. We can take up an hour doing that real easy.
Absolutely, and that's something I think that's probably the most important thing. But we have a few minutes before we go to our next break, and I had a question come in, I guess from Nova? Is this from you or from the chat? This is, how close is it going to get to us, Planet X?
Well, Professor McCanny talks about action at a distance. We see this every day with the moon. Mm-hmm. The moon is a relatively small object in space. It's about 250,000 miles away. And every 12 hours it moves all the oceans on the planet, high tide, and 12 hours later, low tide. So that's action at a distance that anybody and everybody is certainly aware of. The 10th planet is 3 to 5 times larger than the planet Earth, with a far larger iron-nickel core. If it comes within 1 million miles of Earth, it will cause great damage for the reasons I just stated. So how close it comes doesn't matter. It's already interacting with us. It's already causing problems, and these problems will continue to grow worse as
over and over again. And off that last commercial there, if you are a radio station and you're looking to pick up the feed of Late Night in the Midlands, I'll take my payment in gold. So, yeah, and do it soon before the oceans rise, will you please? You know, little success before I have to fly away. But I am Michael Vera. This is Late Night in the Midlands. And again, the website, latenightinthemidlands.com. The email address, latenightinthemidlands@yahoo.com. And Glenn Kennedy's website is projectinsearch.com. So, yeah, Eve of Destruction, very fitting for tonight. We won't be pressing any buttons, especially after Planet X comes around, that's for sure. So, okay, John, we're going to talk a little bit about survival now.
All right, let's do that.
Even.
Well, the first and most important thing anybody can do is get their spiritual house in order. I cannot emphasize how important that is, above and beyond anything and everything else. I use the example of American POWs in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. Men and women in a prisoner situation, eating the same food, wearing the same clothes, doing the same work, having the same housing and medical attention. Those who went into that experience with a strong spiritual belief system were far more likely to survive it than those that did not. Mm-hmm. It's not even debatable. Once you get involved in your spiritual preparedness and your spiritual belief system, it will be something you'll do the rest of your life if you're not already doing it. In addition, you need skills. Now, the skills are commonly found on farms and ranches all over this country. Dozens and dozens of skills that we've been talking about off and on during this show. The two skills, however, that are very important and found in the least amount would be the skills of a ham radio operator and the skills of emergency medical treatment. Those are the two skills most needed and in least amount of supply, no matter what the community, big cities, little cities, farms, ranches. I encourage people to acquire those skills. Most communities are going to have a ham radio club. You can find out who the ham radio people are in your area. Two methods. One, you can go to your local Radio Shack store, talk to the manager. Almost without a doubt, the manager of your local Radio Shack store will know about the local ham radio men and women. The other way is to go to the Federal Communications Commission website, the FCC website, go to the amateur radio section, and you can find all the licensed ham people in any zip code in the United States. They're kept by zip code. I've known these men and women and worked with them now for better part of 20 years. I'm a licensed ham operator myself. And most of the time, ham radio men and women like to share their knowledge, help people gain this information. The FCC set up the ham radio section specifically to help out in times of emergency. That's why it was set up initially. That's why it exists. Emergency medical treatment. Your local fire chief may be putting on CERT training, CERT, that's Community Emergency Response Team training, which does include some first aid training, or perhaps a first responder course where I'm working with my local fire chief and paramedics to do that here in my community. Your local Red Cross may put on first aid training, possibly the local hospital, maybe the local junior college. All are places that you may find emergency medical treatment training. So I encourage people to get the training and get the equipment and supplies to go along with it. If you have emergency medical treatment equipment that you're not qualified to use, you could hurt or kill somebody. So don't get equipment you're not qualified to use, or if you do, be sure to exercise the discipline not to use it until you've got the training. Ham radio equipment does take some knowledge before you can use it successfully. When I'm in front of an audience, Michael, I'll ask the audience, who here has a two-way radio with them this morning? Nobody raises their hands. Then I take out my cell phone and I say, guess what? This is a two-way radio. Cell phones are incredibly simple to use. Most 7- and 8-year-olds can use them quite well. But ham radio equipment does take some knowledge and some skill before you can use them successfully.
That's right. And cell phones, for that matter, they're probably not going to be usable, are they?
Well, all it takes for cell phones not to be usable is what's called system overload. And too many people want to make a phone call. In fact, in most metropolitan areas, around 3 o'clock or 3:30, all the kids get out of school. You can't make a phone call on a landline. I mean, seriously, system overload affects landlines as well as cell phones. So that's very true also. In addition, the government can shut down all the cell phone users except themselves. They have that capability to shut down all cell phone usage except their own, if they choose to.
Well, it's just a flick of a switch for satellites, wasn't it? Isn't it the satellites?
Well, they have at the central switching stations is where it's done, right? Okay. And they can do that, and if they need to, they'll do it, and make sure the system overload doesn't affect them.
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Of course, you need electricity to make cell phones work at all, and that's at risk for a variety of reasons: coronal mass ejections and power grids going down and so forth.
Right, and now there's going to be quite a bit of debris that I would think is going to be pulled in with Planet X, correct? I mean,
Planet X travels in a debris field 250,000 miles wide on either side of it.
So we're going to get nailed by all kinds of stuff.
Oh yes, rocks the size of basketballs, rocks the size of pickup trucks, rocks the size of Rhode Island. And the more you get into this, I found, when I was a kid, we went on a family vacation. I saw a meteor crater out west. It's about a mile wide, about a half mile deep. I found out there's a crater here in my county that's 12 miles wide that they didn't know even existed till they had satellite imaging.
Wow.
And there's a string of these craters across the United States that go, I don't know if anybody knows how long they've been there, but they're basically in a straight line. Meteor crater out, I think, is it Arizona meteor crater? Or New Mexico. Anyway, there's a straight line, these things across the United States, where they most likely all hit at about the same time.
And they've obviously all been there long enough where people aren't talking about them.
Well, they're so big, a crater 12 miles across, you can't tell it's a crater until you're up in a satellite.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that big.
Okay, so then that leads me to worry about even being on the mountain. So if you get away from the ocean, you still have to worry about.
Well, I wondered for a while when I started learning about this, why are the powers that be so preoccupied with getting underground?
Mm-hmm.
There's two reasons: these rocks coming at us and the coronal mass ejections. Coronal mass ejections will make the surface of of course, it's only half the planet that hits it. For about an hour to an hour and a half, the part of the planet's being hit by the coronal mass ejection will be about 140 degrees.
Ooh.
Ooh is right now.
It's a little hot.
I routinely sit in the sauna at 150 degrees because of the health benefits, and I can tolerate that. But people who are at risk, who have health conditions, the very young, the very old, people with very low blood pressure, this will just flat kill them.
Sure.
Absolutely. And it'll wipe out all grass plants like corn and wheat, for example. A coronal mass ejection is quite an event if it gets as bad as it could be.
And I have a feeling it will. If this thing is triple the size of Earth, and it's going to be coming in between the sun and the Earth, then I have a feeling we're going to get quite a hit from this thing.
Absolutely. The odds are in favor of that. The government is preparing for this. They're not prepared for a worst-case scenario, but they're prepared for a very bad scenario.
Now, and again, back to the satellites. They're all going to be wiped out, aren't they?
Pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much. It's the military satellites will be the most resistant between the rocks flying and hitting them and the coronal mass ejections. It's hard to say how many, if any, will survive it.
Okay, so now what are some of the things that people should be doing, even if they have their safe haven? I mean, what about medical supplies such as antibiotics and stuff? How do you get your hands on that?
Okay, well, farm supply stores will sell antibiotics over the counter with no prescription. You can buy them by the pound, and that's a pretty good thing. It's the same antibiotics from the same companies, come off the same production line as the ones that human beings consume. They're just packaged differently. You would need to get some gel caps of the right size and package, because it comes. I buy this stuff every few years because they eventually expire. Get gel caps and fill up the gel caps with the antibiotics, and then it's ready for human consumption.
Now, you say at farm, you can get these at farm markets? I have somebody asking me.
Farm supply stores.
Farm supply
stores. Where the ranchers and farmers go to get their supplies for their cattle and horses.
Oh, okay. So then you really, I mean, you could probably find out the proper dosage to put in these capsules. Probably that information's probably available right on the internet, huh?
Well, if you need a 250 milligram gel cap of antibiotics, you get a 250 milligram gel cap and fill it up. The smart thing to do would be to weigh it so that you get the right milligrams of dosage. Taking too large a dose of antibiotics will cause harm to your gut. Of course, even low levels do it. There's good bacteria in your intestines that the antibiotics will kill. In fact, we encourage people. My wife's a chiropractor. People who've taken a course of antibiotics to consume yogurt and other things that will rebuild the good bacteria that's in your gut, that's in your intestines, which is kind of a rabbit trail. But some people are very much at risk. People that take thyroid medication, for example.
Mm-hmm.
There's an epidemic of thyroid cancer and thyroid-related problems where people have part or all their thyroid removed, and they cannot live. They will die without their thyroid medication. There are ways to get thyroid from animals, like monkeys, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have the research material here in front of me, but people need to be looking at alternatives for prescription medications if they need these things to stay alive.
That's right, and they should probably make their dentist appointments now. And
oh yes, not having access to modern dentistry will not be fun.
No, it'd be very dangerous at that. Believe me, I've had infected tooth before, and tried to pull it myself once, and I'll tell you, my face blew up like a balloon.
Oh, I bet. Absolutely. Yeah. I have a couple of one or two capped teeth, and one of them came off on a weekend, and I used super glue to put it back on.
Really?
My dentist still kids me about that. Yeah.
Yeah, dentistry, that's definitely something that's important, because if you have an infected tooth and, we get into this Planet X thing and nobody's going to be able to take care of it for you, that can kill you.
Absolutely. And I'm working with my local mayor, chief of police, fire chief to make sure that we do have a dentist that's on the premises in our little community. That's a very, very important thing.
That is important, and I mean, how many of these communities do you think are actually set up now? How many people, It's a small percentage that have done it right, really. Yeah, well.
It's a small percentage. And I encourage people, a lot of people, they think, well, my wife and I, we're going to get our 40 acres and we're going to have an island of refuge. That's a prescription for disaster. You need to ingratiate yourself and be part of your local community. You really do.
Yeah.
This island concept, me and my honey against the world, that's just a prescription for disaster, is all that is. Absolutely a prescription for disaster. You need to become part of the community, join the local church, get active in local civic organizations, especially if you're not related by blood or marriage to people in the area. And I am related to people in my area. I found out after moving here. My mother's side of the family is from this part of the world, and it's been very good, and it helps me be accepted. But if you don't have people you're related to by blood and marriage, you better get to know people, and they need to get to know you, because in a time of crisis, you don't want to be looked at as somebody who's unknown quantity. Can we trust this person? What's this person like? These little communities, Michael, they will survive as communities, or they will go down as communities. That's what will happen.
Yeah. Now, what about water?
Well, you need access to potable water that you own and you control. You do not want to be dependent on any kind of municipal or county water supply. You really don't. You're making yourself very vulnerable when you do that. And the bottom line is you need a well or a spring or a lake or a pond or a creek or something where, obviously, if it's open water, you need to be able to filter it before you can consume it.
Now, do you have any specific filtering systems that you recommend?
Well, I offer the Berkey system at my website. They've been around for about a century, so they've pretty much got it down. They know what they're doing, the Berkey filters. For in the field, I don't sell them, but I like the Katahdin. They're made in Europe. They're mil-spec, and they're very compact, and they do an excellent job of filtering water out in the bush with a very compact. Basically, the little Katahdin mini ceramic is about as big as 2 packs of cigarettes, and will filter hundreds of gallons of water.
Okay, and now, I mean, again, people got to realize that they're not going to have electricity, so they're not going to be able to just store stuff in the refrigerator. So they're going to want to, if they don't know how now, they're going to want to know how to can and so on, aren't they?
Those are some of the skills still commonly found in farms and ranches. Raising food, preserving food with canning and dehydration and drying, and salt. You can preserve meat by drying it, making a jerky, and using salt. There's lots and lots of skills, and I'll recommend a couple of books that cover those skills. Okay. Dare to Prepare by Holly Deo is an excellent one. Another one I have here at hand is Making the Best of Basics by James Stevens with a V. James Stevens. It's been around for about 20 years. He keeps adding to it and making it bigger. But you need to practice these skills. These are things that can't be learned by reading a book. The book will get you started and help you figure out what you need to do, but you need to practice the skills and learn the skills by doing them.
That's right. So we got another break coming up here in a minute, and then I'd like to talk a little further about anything that we haven't covered as far as survival. And one thing I'm curious now. Now, you were in the military, and I know that on your last CD, your latest CD, that you had another Navy personnel who came out.
That's right. We'll talk about Tim Spencer when we come back from the break. This is very important stuff. It's critical, actually, to everything we're doing.
All right, great. Well, let's do that then when we come back. So just hang on, John, and we've got another half hour to go here on Late Night in the Midlands. I'm Michael Vera. This is Late Night in the Midlands. John Moore is my guest, and I'm hoping we'll be able to get him on again before it's too late, but we'll see. I don't know. He's definitely contributed to this show, coming on several times and trying to warn and spread the word and prepare everybody who listens to this show. So I definitely appreciate that, and I know a lot of you do. And for the ones who are sitting back right now laughing about this whole thing, well, all I can say is you got a great sense of humor. I'm Michael Vera. Okay, John.
Okay, Mr. Tim Spencer.
Yes.
As you know, I'm a homicide detective. We were having a fundraiser for a client of mine charged with homicide, and it was sponsored by the Western Cherokee Nation, and there's a gentleman walking around with a very official ID badge that said Director of Preparedness, Western Cherokee Nation. So I introduced myself as Tim Spencer, and my DVD had just been come out, the first disc had just come out, and I get him a copy. He watches it. He gets back with me a week later. He says, "John, I've seen this map before." I said, "Really?" He says, "Yeah. I was working in New Orleans. I was in the Navy Submarine Corps doing classified work, and I saw your map." Well, we got together and talked. We've since become very good friends. And Tim has done what no other Navy veteran has agreed to do. He's gone public with me. My interview with him appears on disc number 2 of Global Warming, What the Government Isn't Telling You. And he talks about the map that he saw while he was in New Orleans. And we chat for a while. And his wife is my friend also. And the three of us were having lunch about 2 years ago this spring. And as we're having lunch, he says, "John, Tim and I are from Central Florida. We like fresh seafood."
Mm-hmm.
She says, "I don't like snow. I don't like ice. I don't even like Missouri. We're here because of that map." And when Tim retired from the Navy, he moved his family to the Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks because of the map. And he's gone public. The interview is on my DVD. It's very powerful stuff, isn't it?
It certainly is, John. I'll tell you, the second CD, the first one was good enough. The second one really knocked it home.
Well, I needed to do that. I put these DVDs together just like I was doing a trial notebook for a homicide. I know how to put evidence together in a logical, progressive format. So that it makes sense and people will understand it. And the lawyers who watch this, they recognize trial preparation when they see it because they do it themselves. That's what I did here, Michael. I was doing trial preparation, and the people watching the DVD, they're the jury. And my job is to convince the jury and bring the evidence to the table, as we say in my business, clear and convincing evidence. And I bring an overwhelming amount of clear and convincing evidence to the point where...
And the research that you've presented, the evidence that you've presented to me has woke me up better than anybody's. Honestly, it has.
Well, if you're going to stack me up against Jason Rand and some of these others, that's a pretty extreme compliment there, Michael.
Well, it's true. You know, Dr. Rand, I love the guy. I've had him on this show several times. He's a great guy to talk to and interview. He does seem to think the timeline. I'm just not with the timeline so much. He thinks it's going to be 50 years down the line before this happens.
Well, funny you should mention that. I do encourage people to watch Al Gore's film, An Inconvenient Truth.
Mm-hmm.
Al Gore states in that film that the middle of the century, which would be 2050, is when things are going to get bad. Now, that's what NASA says.
That's all the more you shouldn't believe it.
Well, never a straight answer, right?
Right.
You know, if these events were going to happen in the middle of the century, why would they move all these CIA people who will be retired and no longer in the system now? You know?
Exactly.
Why would they be in such a hurry to build a seed vault in 6 months now when they could take a more leisurely pace and save a tremendous amount of money? These things are being done now because they have no choice. The CIA and NSA, EPA library are all being moved now because they have no choice. If these people are all going to be retired, why would they bother moving them now?
Yeah, I had somebody actually gave me the idiotic answer about Plum Island. So, oh, they're moving that because too many people know about it now. I was like, are you kidding me? Really? Are you really kidding me? It's like, you know what, I'm going to get you for your birthday some floaties, and I hope that you do well.
Well, it is funny. It's serious stuff, but some of the things people come up with are absolutely funny.
And some are just plain in denial. Others, they know it's true, but they just will not accept it. And, you know.
No, they won't. And that's going to be, that reality is not going to change, Michael. You know, my DVD is making a big difference on one hand. On the other, if we reach 1.5% of the people in this country, I would be surprised.
Well, you know, there's people like yourself who they're out there spreading the word, and you know, a lot of people know about this. It's just not enough people take it serious. They
Absolutely.
They just can't imagine it happening to them. And
if it's never happened before, it'll never happen in the future.
Right, and well, the thing is, it has happened before. It just hasn't happened to them.
Exactly.
You know, the evidence is out there. I've interviewed Michael Cremo, and he's believed this has happened 6 times before.
At least, Michael Cremo is one of my heroes.
I love that guy.
the cutting edge archaeology work he's done. Him and Jonathan Gray are contemporaries. There's multiple evidence. We talked about this earlier in the show of high technology having existed on this planet in the distant past, and Michael Cremo is one of the best people on the planet to document this.
He sure is. I mean, it's just the work that he's done is incredible, and if nothing else, I'm glad that I had an opportunity to do this show just because of all the great minds that I've been able to pick through, even your own, sir, and and I actually have Jesse Ventura coming up on the show next month on August.
Yeah, I want to get Jesse on my show also. When he started this series of programs, I thought, it's going to be a bunch of fluff. It won't amount to anything.
Yeah, well, it did.
It did. I mean, God bless Jesse Ventura. The man has no fear, and they were not fluff at all. He really got into some hard topics and hit them hard.
Yeah, there's a couple I would really like to see him tackle. One is the chemtrail, and the other is Planet X. I'd really like to see him go after that.
Well, is he going to have more shows? Do you know?
I'm not sure. I thought that he was.
Okay.
As far as I know, I think that he's doing. I know that they've been putting some heat on the station there about not playing certain shows.
Well, that I confirmed this in my weekend presentation. There was this service called TiVo, where you can record television shows and watch them later. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, apparently, TiVo went in to people's machines, or TiVo machines in their homes. They can do this by remote control, of course, and erased some of the Ventura shows.
Yes, they did, and you know what? I'm happy to say that Glenn Kennedy and myself, I've got the full-length shows on my website. I had them wiped off my website not too long ago too, John, but I got them back up there.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
As Bo Greitz says, you're over the target when you're taking flack.
Yeah.
This is amazing. This is just absolutely amazing what they're doing, and these countermeasures is what I call them, countermeasures. They'll tolerate people being woke up to a point. Jesse Ventura, you talk about coming after me. Jesse Ventura has nationwide recognition because of the things he's done, the movies and being governor, and a lot of exposure. These TV shows, we can see where the edge is, where they won't tolerate anymore. And Ventura shows that were erased off TiVo. That's the edge. They won't tolerate that. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's amazing to me the lengths that they go. And and then there's going to be people who had it erased off their TiVo, so it was just an error. They don't want to look into what it really is. And I just can't stress enough to everybody listening that this is real. And I love on your CD how you ask. You said, let me just ask you all one question: would your government lie to you? And I thought that was a great way to get things rolling.
It is, and it's the most important question you can ask.
It certainly is. And I remember you asked me the first time you came on my show, and I kind of laughed at it and said, oh yeah, they would lie. And
that's the response most mature audiences will give. They start laughing, and it's kind of a spontaneous, hysterical type laughter, but it's there for a reason, because most mature adults agree that the federal government of the United States would lie to us.
Oh, absolutely, and they are lying to us. They're absolutely lying to us. And, some will argue that they should tell us about Planet X, and others will say, well, they couldn't. I don't know what to think about that. I think that in small ways the information has been getting out to us. I don't know as though and I don't want to defend the government by no means,
right.
but I don't think they could come right out and broadcast it on TV. Everything would go to hell, wouldn't it?
Well, if it was given the kind of credibility that the evening news would give it, or a major political figure like the Secretary of State or somebody, it would be a mess.
Yeah.
It would be an absolute mess real quick. Absolutely.
So, and that's a reason why I think, I know they found those coffins. I'll bring it up again in Georgia, mass for lots of bodies in one, and I think that's what it's for. I think they're ready for cleanup before it even happens.
Well, that's the nature of government, is to get ready for things like that, isn't it?
It sure is. So hopefully that'll be the nature of your listeners and mine, and they'll get ready for it too.
Well, that's all we can do. We're the watchmen on the wall, Michael. You, myself, and some of the others who are trying to expose us. We're the watchmen on the wall, and all we can do is put out the warning, and it's everybody else's responsibility to pay heed and then act on it.
That's right, John. Well, we're getting right about to the end here, so if you would, anything you want to get out there, you've got a couple minutes to go ahead and do that.
My DVD is now a 2-DVD set. It's titled Global Warming, What the Government Isn't Telling You. And my website where you can order it is thelibertyman.com. My radio shows are listed at my website, too.